The chandelier light inside the Ritz-Carlton ballroom shimmered like crushed stars, but for Evelyn Carter, the glow felt cold, almost cruel. She had arrived quietly through the side entrance, holding a simple clutch, her breath trembling as she tried to calm her nerves. This gala had always been Brandon's favorite stage, the one night he insisted they attend together, hand in hand, smiling for the cameras. But tonight, his hand wasn't in hers. As the orchestra softened, all eyes turned toward the top of the marble staircase. Brandon Hale descended with a woman on his arm, a woman who wasn't his wife. Vanessa Boyd's crimson gown hugged her like a trophy, shimmering under the spotlight Brandon clearly believed he deserved. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn felt her lungs collapse inward, but she stood frozen, nails digging into her palm. Brandon paused halfway down the stairs, basking in the whispers, before leaning toward the microphone. "Tonight," he announced with a practiced smile, "I want to introduce the person who will be by my side in our future ventures, Vanessa Boyd." Someone near Evelyn murmured, "Isn't his wife here?" Someone else replied, "Poor woman." Imagine the humiliation. Evelyn's vision blurred. Her husband, her partner, had chosen this moment, this room filled with New York's elite, to show the world she was no longer part of his life. And then she felt it, a presence behind her. Her father, Samuel Carter, stood silently at the back of the ballroom, no anger on his face, no surprise, just a chilling stillness. He didn't offer to hold her hand, didn't speak a single word. Instead, he lifted his phone, tapped once, and slipped it back into his coat pocket. Moments later, a man in a black suit received a message and hurried out of the ballroom. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but her father had just triggered the first move of a financial earthquake, one that would swallow Brandon whole. And the room was seconds away from realizing something was terribly wrong. Evelyn Carter had never belonged to the world of chandeliers, designer gowns, and champagne fountains, at least not by choice. She grew up in a quiet New England town where the loudest sound after 9 p.m. was the grocery store's ice machine. She still preferred simple routines: morning coffee from the corner cafe, a walk through Central Park before work, and evenings spent reading on her small balcony, overlooking a streetlight that flickered every night at 8:17 p.m. People often mistook her gentleness for weakness. She didn't correct them. Evelyn had learned early in life that silence could protect you. Her mother had left when she was 7, disappearing without explanation, leaving only a note that read, "I can't do this anymore." It was the first and deepest wound in Evelyn's young heart. Her father, Samuel Carter, stepped into both roles, stern, steady, unyieldingly private. But even then, Evelyn never fully understood the quiet storm beneath his calm exterior. She didn't know he was a billionaire. She didn't know he moved quietly among the titans of Wall Street. She didn't know her father could end a man's career with a single phone call. He made sure she never knew. So Evelyn grew up believing she had to earn her place in the world on her own. She worked 2 jobs through college, bought a used Toyota with every last dollar in her savings, and took a junior analyst position at a mid-level investment firm. Her life was stable, small but steady. And then Brandon Hale crashed into it. He was charming, confident, ambitious in the way that looked admirable to everyone except those who knew better. Brandon made Evelyn feel seen, important, chosen. He took her to rooftop dinners in Manhattan, held her hand in the subway, and kissed her forehead before she left for work. He made promises effortlessly, as if love were a language he was born fluent in. For the first time, Evelyn believed she had outrun her childhood. She believed she had found someone who would never leave. But as Brandon climbed higher, earning attention in tech circles, something shifted. He became sharper, colder, more calculating. He stopped asking about her day. He stopped holding her hand. He started treating her like a prop, a gentle, quiet wife who made him look grounded and reliable in front of investors. Evelyn felt the change. She just kept telling herself it was stress, that every marriage had seasons, that love could be repaired if she held on tightly enough. But on the night of the gala, when she saw Vanessa Boyd on Brandon's arm, Evelyn understood the truth. He hadn't grown distant. He had been preparing to replace her. And her world was already unraveling, thread by painful thread. Before the humiliation at the Ritz-Carlton, before Vanessa's red dress burned into Evelyn's memory, there had been a time when Evelyn believed her life with Brandon was the closest thing to a miracle she'd ever known. They lived in a modern glass-walled apartment on the 34th floor overlooking the Hudson. place Brandon called our startup nest. Evelyn never corrected him, even though her modest salary barely covered groceries, and he insisted on choosing apartments far beyond their budget. Brandon liked things that sparkled views, people, opportunities, and their home reflected that. A marble kitchen island he never cooked on, velvet bar stools no one ever sat in, and a wall of framed tech awards Brandon polished more often than he talked to his wife. Amid all that shine, Evelyn kept her world simple. Her favorite corner was the small balcony where she kept a single potted rosemary plant, the only thing in the apartment that felt like hers. Still, she tried to belong to his world. She learned to smile at networking events, to shake hands with venture capitalists, to listen politely as Brandon explained the stock market to her, as if she didn't spend her days analyzing it herself. She bought dresses on clearance racks and altered them at home just to match the effortless elegance of the women Brandon surrounded himself with. And every time he cracked a joke at her expense in front of colleagues, she told herself he didn't mean it, he was stressed. He was building something important. His head resting on her shoulder as they watched the lights flicker across Manhattan. Mornings when he brewed her coffee and kissed her temple before rushing out the door. Birthdays he celebrated with handwritten notes tucked beside her MacBook. He could be tender, so tender she almost forgot the sharp edges. But the sharp edges kept growing. He started coming home late, smelling faintly of perfume she didn't wear. He brought his laptop to bed, claiming he was too busy to talk. He criticized her clothes, her job, her silence. The man who once held her face in his hands now barely glanced at her across the dinner table. And yet, Evelyn stayed. Not because she didn't see the cracks she saw everyone, but because she feared losing the fragile family she had built from the ruins of her childhood. She clung to the hope that love, once real, could be repaired. But in the weeks leading up to the gala, Brandon's eyes no longer rested on her. They were already searching for someone else. And that someone had already stepped into the space Evelyn was fighting to hold. Long before Brandon Hale walked into the Ritz-Carlton ballroom with Vanessa Boyd on his arm, the seeds of betrayal had already been planted quietly, consistently, and with the precision of a man who believed he would never face consequences. Brandon had always been ambitious. It was part of what drew Evelyn to him in the first place, his energy, his hunger, the way he spoke about the future, like it was something he could physically grab if he just reached hard enough. But as Hale dynamics grew, so did Brandon's appetite for more. And more rarely came with moderation. 2 years before the gala, his company hit a quiet but devastating financial wall. Investors pulled back. A product launch failed. A lawsuit whispered through the corridors, threatening to expose mismanagement Brandon insisted was just a misunderstanding. Evelyn never saw the documents, but she saw the change in him, how his shoulders stiffened, how the light in his eyes thinned into something brittle and sharp. Instead of opening up to his wife, he opened the door to people who fed his ego. That's how Vanessa Boyd entered the picture. At first, Brandon described her as strategic, someone with connections to large capital groups, then clever, then helpful. Eventually, he stopped describing her at all. Evelyn noticed the shift when Brandon began wearing cologne she didn't buy, when he started staying late at partnership meetings, when he grew defensive any time she asked about work. But the real clue came the night she found 2 champagne glasses in his office, one smeared with red lipstick. When she confronted him, Brandon didn't apologize. He laughed, told her she was being insecure, told her she was imagining things, told her she should focus on becoming the kind of woman who fits beside a CEO. That night, Evelyn cried quietly in the bathroom while Brandon slept soundly, certain she would never leave. Because, in his mind, she couldn't. Brandon believed Evelyn needed him. He believed she had no family, no power, no name of her own. He believed he could replace her without consequence. And when Vanessa hinted that her father might fund Hale Dynamics, but only if Brandon appeared unattached, the decision became easy for him. Replace the gentle wife with the glittering asset. Evelyn wasn't blindsided because she was weak. She was blindsided because she loved a man who assumed she had nothing worth losing. What Brandon didn't know, what would destroy him later, was that Evelyn's bloodline carried more power than his ambition could ever grasp. And the silent man at the back of the gala was about to prove it. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom wasn't just elegant that night, it was merciless. Every crystal chandelier, every polished marble surface reflected the same thing: Evelyn Carter's heartbreak unfolding in real time. Laughter mingled with the soft hum of violins as New York's elite floated from table to table, unaware that a scandal was seconds away from detonating. When Brandon Hale stepped onto the stage, the spotlight clung to him like an obedient servant. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his smile practiced, his arrogance unmistakable. But it was the woman beside him, Vanessa Boyd, who made the room gasp. Her crimson gown shimmered like a warning flare, her hand draped over Brandon's arm as if she already owned him. Evelyn stood several feet away, her view unobstructed, her heart unable to look away even when it hurt. Brandon cleared his throat, leaning toward the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced smoothly, "tonight marks a new chapter. I'd like you to meet someone who will be a significant part of Hale Dynamics' future." He didn't look at Evelyn. He didn't even acknowledge her presence. Vanessa flashed a coy smile, lowering her gaze as if she were shy, but her fingers tightened around Brandon's sleeve, claiming him publicly. The whispers started instantly. "Isn't he married? That's not his wife. My God, is he announcing it here?" Evelyn's stomach twisted. She felt the heat rush to her face, humiliation spreading through her body like fever. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't understand how the man who once kissed her forehead every morning could now discard her like a forgotten accessory. Then, through the roar in her ears, she heard Brandon say it calmly, confidently, cruelly. "Vanessa will be joining me in all upcoming ventures. It's time for a partnership that aligns with the company's future direction." A few people clapped. Most didn't. But Brandon basked in the attention anyway, mistaking shock for admiration. Vanessa leaned into the microphone, her voice soft but calculated. "I'm honored to stand beside Brandon. We believe in building something powerful together." Together. The words sliced through Evelyn. She staggered backward, gripping a nearby table to steady herself. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall, not here, not in front of people who lived for gossip. And then, she saw him. Her father. Samuel Carter stood in the shadow of a marble column, expression unreadable, hands clasped loosely behind him. He didn't rush to her, didn't comfort her, didn't speak. But the moment his gaze locked onto Brandon, something shifted in the air, something cold and decisive. Samuel reached into his coat, tapped a single message, and nodded once. Within minutes, men in black suits began leaving the ballroom. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but the man who humiliated her had just triggered his own downfall. The ride home after the gala felt longer than any road Evelyn Carter had ever traveled. The city lights blurred against the car window, streaks of gold and white bending like they were grieving with her. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, breathing shallowly, trying to quiet the crushing ache in her chest. But humiliation has a way of echoing long after the applause fades. Something shifted inside her. The door clicked open, and she stepped into silence. No lingering scent of Brandon's cologne. No half-finished coffee mug on the counter. No warmth. Just distance. Just emptiness. On the dining table lay a neatly folded envelope with her name written in Brandon's handwriting. She didn't want to open it, didn't want confirmation of what the world already saw. But her fingers moved anyway, trembling as she unfolded the single sheet of paper. "We need space. You should stay somewhere else for a while, Brandon." No apology. No explanation. Just a dismissal. Her knees buckled. She sank onto the floor, clutching the letter to her chest as her breath broke into sobs she couldn't control. The marble tiles felt colder than ever, leaching the warmth from her skin as tears blurred her vision. It was the kind of crying that came from old wounds, the kind she thought she'd already survived. A family lost. A mother gone. A husband who never truly wanted her. Her hands reached instinctively for something familiar. The small Tiffany box Brandon had once given her, a simple silver necklace, he claimed, symbolized their beginning. She opened it, staring at the delicate charm. Once a promise, now a memory turned weapon. She whispered to herself, "What did I do wrong?" The apartment answered with silence. Hours passed before she forced herself to stand. She walked into the bedroom, his side perfectly made, her pillow untouched. The distance between them felt like miles. She packed slowly, folding clothes with numb hands, slipping her journal and MacBook into a worn canvas tote. She didn't know where she would go. She only knew she couldn't stay here. On her way out, she hesitated at the doorway. The home she once thought was her safe place now stood like a monument to everything she'd misjudged. Her voice cracked. I loved you, and it wasn't enough. Dan some. How some? It won and won some. As the elevator descended, Evelyn pressed her back against the wall and slid down, her body shaking with the force of grief. What she didn't see, what she couldn't yet imagine, was that her father's message from the gala had already begun unraveling Brandon's empire. Her world was falling apart, but his was about to collapse even faster. While Evelyn cried quietly in the back of the taxi that carried her away from the life she had tried so hard to build, her father, Samuel Carter, stood alone on the terrace of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom. The skyline of Manhattan glowed before him, millions of lights, yet none bright enough to soften the cold calculations settling in his eyes. Samuel was not a man who raised his voice, not a man who made scenes. His power didn't come from volume, it came from silence. From understanding that the world was built on leverage, and he owned more of it than most people ever realized. He had watched the entire spectacle unfold. Brandon's arrogance, Vanessa's smug smile, the humiliation burning across Evelyn's face. It took everything in him not to cross the room and tear the microphone out of Brandon Hale's hand. But anger was emotional. Samuel operated in strategy. As the gala carried on, he stepped away from the noise, drew out his phone, and tapped a single, encrypted command. It went to 3 people, only his chief analyst, his acquisition strategist, and his attorney. Initiate Hale Dynamics review. Immediate. Full discretion. Within moments, a digital blueprint of Brandon's company began flowing through the hands of Samuel's team. Financial liabilities, hidden debts, confidential filings, lawsuits pending. Anything Brandon had tried to bury now surfaced like bruises beneath thin skin. And Samuel saw it all. He exhaled once, calm, measured, final. Hale Dynamics is weaker than he pretends, his analyst reported quietly through the phone. He's 1 bad quarter from collapse. Good, Samuel replied. Find the cracks. We buy through them. This wasn't revenge. This was protection. A father's instinct sharpened by decades of corporate war. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat alone on a bus stop, bench miles away, clutching her tote bag, unaware that the man she thought had abandoned her emotionally was now orchestrating one of the fastest acquisitions Wall Street would ever whisper about. Back at the gala, Brandon and Vanessa laughed with a group of investors. Believing they had won, believing humiliating, Evelyn came without consequences. They didn't notice the shift. How several high-profile guests suddenly left early. How 2 venture capitalists stopped returning Brandon's eye contact. How whispers began circling about internal red flags and unexpected liabilities. Samuel walked past the couple without acknowledging them. He didn't need to. His silence was already dismantling Brandon's future. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, a new report arrived on Samuel's phone. Sir, we can take Hale Dynamics within 30 days. He typed the only response necessary. Make it 14, if you come now. Because while Evelyn felt she had lost everything, Samuel Carter was preparing to take everything from the man who broke her. While Evelyn curled up on her friend Harper's couch, trying to hold herself together, Brandon Hale and Vanessa Boyd were doing the exact opposite. They were celebrating inside a private suite at the street. Regis one Brandon had rented without hesitation, using the company card they toasted with champagne, far too expensive for a man whose business was quietly bleeding to death. Vanessa lounged across the velvet chaise, her crimson dress now replaced with a silk robe that matched her smug expression. To new beginnings, Brandon declared, raising his glass. Vanessa lifted hers lazily. To us, she added, though her eyes shimmered with something colder than affection calculation. Brandon didn't notice. He was too caught up in his fantasy. He'd humiliated Evelyn, impressed the investors, and secured the attention of a powerful family. In his mind, the night had been a triumph. A strategic masterstroke, proof he was ascending into the elite circle. He always believed he deserved to rule. He leaned back, arms stretched confidently across the sofa. By next quarter, Hale Dynamics will get Boyd Enterprises backing. Your father loves decisive men. End quote. Vanessa's smile stiffened, barely detectable, but enough to reveal a truth Brandon still hadn't realized. Her father didn't respect decisive men. He respected controllable men. And Brandon was not controllable, just delusional. Still, she played the part. She leaned in, traced a finger across his jaw, and whispered, "You did everything perfectly tonight." But internally, Vanessa wondered what Evelyn knew. Because women like Evelyn, quiet, soft, underestimated, often carried secrets no one saw coming. Brandon poured another drink. You know, Vanessa, he said, Evelyn will be fine. She's adaptable. She knows her place. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. And what place is that? The past, he said simply. The arrogance in his voice hung heavy in the room. Vanessa studied him, seeing more clearly than ever just how reckless he truly was. Downstairs in the hotel lobby, two men in dark suits stepped inside Samuel Carter's analysts, arriving to collect information Brandon didn't know he had exposed. They requested financial statements, cash flow confirmations, and partnership details. The receptionist, trusting the authoritative tone, granted temporary access. The first cracks in Brandon's foundation were already forming, invisible to him, but glaringly obvious to those who understood the language of power. Meanwhile, Brandon lounged in luxury, blissfully unaware that every toast he made brought him closer to financial ruin. He leaned forward, kissing Vanessa as he murmured, "This is the beginning of everything." But Vanessa pulled back slightly, sensing a shift in the world around them, a tremor she couldn't yet name. Because at that very moment, Samuel Carter had already bought the first piece of Hale Dynamics. Harper Quinn didn't bother knocking when she entered the small guest room where Evelyn sat curled on the edge of the bed. Harper never knocked, especially not when someone she cared about was falling apart. She flicked on the light, tossed her handbag on the dresser, and said in her sharp, unfiltered voice, "Stand up. You need to hear something." Evelyn blinked, puffy-eyed and exhausted. "Harper, please, not tonight." "Yes, tonight, because your husband is an idiot, and his stupidity just handed you a weapon." Evelyn shook her head. "Harper, I don't want revenge. I just want this pain to stop." Harper crossed her arms. "This isn't revenge. This is self-defense, and possibly your ticket to a future where Brandon Hale can never humiliate you again." Evelyn frowned, confused. Harper reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder worn, creased, and stamped with the signature of a law firm Evelyn recognized from years ago. "What is that?" she whispered. "Your prenuptial agreement." Evelyn's breath caught. "But," Brandon said, "we didn't have one." "Oh," he lied, Harper said casually, flipping open the folder. "Or he forgot, or he thought you'd never find it. But sweetheart, not only do you have a prenup, you have the most important clause he never should have signed." Harper tapped the page with a perfectly manicured nail. Evelyn leaned forward, scanning the highlighted paragraph. She froze. The room seemed to tilt. The words blurred, then sharpened again. "In the event of misconduct, adultery, or public moral breach, transfer to Evelyn Carter." Evelyn's pulse hammered. This can't be real." "It's very real," Harper said. "And it means that penthouse? Yours. His luxury car? Yours. Those investments he bragged about? Also yours." Evelyn shook her head in disbelief. "But why would he sign something like this?" Harper smirked. "Because when Brandon met you, he thought you had nothing. He figured protecting assets from a modest girl was easy. He never imagined you'd be the one protecting yourself from him. Doesn't it?" G's forend and one. Evelyn stared at the document, her lifeline, her shield, her unexpected power. Her voice trembled. "Harper, I don't want to destroy him." Harper softened, placing a steady hand on her friend's shoulder. "You're not destroying him. He destroyed himself. You're just making sure he doesn't take you down with him." For the first time since the gala, Evelyn sat up straighter. The prenup glowed under the lamplight like evidence in a courtroom drama. She had been shaken. She had been humiliated. She had been pushed aside. But now she had leverage. And leverage changes everything. At dawn, while Evelyn slept restlessly on Harper's couch, Samuel Carter was already seated in his Park Avenue office, an entire floor of glass and steel overlooking Manhattan's morning haze. The world was waking up, but Samuel had been awake long before sunrise. Men like him didn't sleep much. They calculated. A fresh stack of reports lay open in front of him, documents his analysts had gathered after the gala. Hale Dynamics numbers were worse than projected. Brandon wasn't just reckless. He was hemorrhaging money while pretending to be the next tech visionary. Samuel leaned back in his leather chair and whispered to himself, "Arrogant boy." Across the table, his acquisition strategist, Mark Livingston, adjusted his glasses nervously. "Sir, with all due respect, Hale Dynamics is a sinking ship. Are you sure you want to move forward?" Samuel's voice was calm, almost gentle. I don't rescue the ship, Mark. I claim it. Mark nodded, swallowing hard. Samuel didn't issue threats. He issued decisions. And those decisions became reality. Samuel opened the next folder, a map of the company's debt structure. Most of it belonged to smaller investors who were desperate to sell, perfect targets. We'll buy them out quietly, he said. No announcements, no ripples. I want Brandon Hale to wake up one day and realize he doesn't own what he thinks he owns. Mark scribbled notes quickly. Understood. And the board? Samuel tapped a pen against the paper. Half of them are sitting on margin loans. Buy those, too. Anyone who doubts Brandon should be invited to step aside. There was no emotion in his words. Samuel didn't need revenge. He wanted protection for Evelyn, and for any version of her that ever believed she wasn't worthy. Meanwhile, across the city, Brandon strutted into his office like a conquering hero. His assistant congratulated him on the gala's impact, though she avoided eye contact, sensing something off in the air. Emails from investors were unusually vague. 2 meetings were suddenly postponed. Brandon shrugged it off. In his mind, last night proved his rise was unstoppable. He had no idea the ground beneath him was already dissolving. At Tio. Fjortenay. M. Samuel received a discreet message. 32% acquired without detection. Additional 18% pending signatures before close of day. Samuel allowed the slightest smile. By lunchtime, he would control half the company. By evening, he would control all of it. Not through force. Through silence. He looked out over Manhattan, whispering so softly the city couldn't hear him. Evelyn, you will never be powerless again. Thank you for watching. And somewhere in his office corridors, a new phrase began crossing whispers. Hale Dynamics wasn't collapsing by accident, someone was pulling the strings. By the next morning, the energy inside Hale Dynamics felt wrong. It wasn't loud or chaotic, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a building implodes. Brandon Hale strutted into the office with the swagger of a man who believed he had secured his rise into the Boyd dynasty. Vanessa's perfume still clung to his collar. His smile was self-satisfied, careless, dangerously confident. But the receptionist didn't return his smile. His assistant avoided eye contact. 2 engineers abruptly stopped whispering when he walked by. Brandon frowned. What's going on? No one answered. Inside his glass-walled corner office, he dropped his briefcase, loosened his tie, and refreshed his inbox, expecting congratulatory messages from investors after his dramatic gala announcement. Instead, he found, meeting canceled. Need to reschedule. Will revisit next quarter. Cannot commit at this time. One by one, doors were quietly closing. He slammed his hand on the desk. What the hell is this? His assistant stepped into the doorway, pale. Mr. Hale. The kind of activity. She swallowed. Several heartbeat kicked up. Sold to who? She hesitated. A private equity group. They won't disclose a name. Brandon jumped to his feet. Get legal. Get accounting. Get everyone. Now. 15 minutes later, his board members crowded around a conference table, murmuring anxiously. Papers shuffled, laptops clicked. Someone cursed under their breath. Finally, the CFO cleared his throat, voice strained. A controlling stake, just under 51%, was purchased in the last 12 hours. Brandon's skin went cold. That's impossible, he snapped. No one has that kind of capital ready to deploy overnight. The CFO looked away. Someone does. Brandon's vision pulsed at the edges. Who bought it? We don't know. Of course they didn't. Whoever made the purchase had used shell entities, blind trusts, offshore subsidiaries. This wasn't random. This was strategy-heavy, precise, and intentional. Vanessa called him then, but he ignored the ringing. His hands shook as he scrolled through legal filings. His company, his identity was slipping away like water through his fingers. This has to be Boyd Enterprises, he muttered. Vanessa's father is trying to pressure me. But deep down, a part of him knew. This wasn't the Boyds. This felt different. Colder. Smarter. Personnel? Meanwhile, miles away, Samuel Carter sat calmly in his office, sipping black coffee while signing the final acquisition forms. By noon, Brandon Hale no longer controlled his own company. He just didn't know who had taken it from him. Not yet. But the moment he discovered the truth would mark the beginning of his true downfall. 2 days after the gala, Evelyn Carter found herself standing outside a quiet cafe in Soho, the same place she and Brandon once frequented on Sunday mornings. Harper had insisted they come here for coffee, claiming Evelyn needed fresh air and fresh perspective. But Evelyn didn't expect her to be there. Vanessa Boyd sat at a corner table, designer sunglasses perched on her head, scrolling casually through her phone as though she hadn't helped destroy a marriage in front of half of Manhattan. Her iced latte gleamed beside her, untouched. The moment she spotted Evelyn, a slow, satisfied smile curled at her lips. "Well," Vanessa said sweetly, crossing one leg over the other, "if it isn't the woman of the hour." Harper stepped forward, ready to unleash hell, but Evelyn gently placed a hand on her arm. "It's fine," she whispered. "Let me handle this." Vanessa leaned back. "I'm surprised you're out in public. I figured you'd be hiding somewhere." Her voice dripped with false sympathy. Humiliation can be so exhausting. Evelyn didn't react. Silence was her armor. Vanessa continued, swirling her straw. "Brandon told me you were sensitive, but I didn't realize just how fragile you were." "Poor thing," Harper scoffed, but Evelyn stood steady, her breath controlled. The prenup, Samuel's takeover, Brandon's unraveling, Vanessa knew none of it, and that ignorance gave Evelyn power she'd never recognized before. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "You don't know anything about me." "Oh, honey," Vanessa laughed. "I know enough. Brandon chose me. That tells me everything." Evelyn met her gaze, unblinking. "Brandon didn't choose you. He chose the illusion of power you represented." Vanessa's smile faltered. Evelyn continued, her voice quiet but sharp. "You think humiliating me makes you valuable? That standing next to him elevates you? You're just a part of his strategy, one he didn't plan very well." Vanessa's brows tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Harper smirked. "Exactly what it sounds like." For the first time, Vanessa looked unsettled. She tapped her nails on the table. "Brandon said you'd break. He said you didn't have the spine to fight back." Evelyn inhaled slowly. "He underestimated me, and he underestimated the consequences of his own actions." End quote. Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes, fear, confusion, or perhaps the first hint of realization that Brandon Hale's world wasn't as stable as she believed. Evelyn straightened. "Enjoy your coffee, Vanessa. Things are about to change." As Evelyn walked away with Harper, Vanessa called out, her voice sharp and trembling. "What's that supposed to mean?" Evelyn didn't look back, because soon Vanessa would understand, and Brandon Hale's empire would begin collapsing right under her perfectly manicured hands. By the fourth day after the gala, Manhattan's financial district buzzed with the kind of electricity that only arrives when a secret finally cracks open. Phones rang nonstop. Analysts whispered in hallways. Assistants exchanged confused looks as emails poured in from every direction. Evelyn Carter woke to Harper, shaking her shoulder. "Ev, you need to sit up. Right now." "Thank you." Still groggy, Evelyn pushed herself upright. "What happened?" Harper turned her phone toward her. There, splashed across the front page of the Wall Street Ledger, was the headline that would send tremors through every corner of Brandon Hale's carefully crafted life. Hale Dynamics faces hostile takeover control quietly acquired overnight. Below it, another line spoke louder than anything. Buyer's identity, unconfirmed sources, suggest strategic retaliation. And perdition. And perdition's off. Evelyn's stomach tightened. This is about Brandon. "It gets worse," Harper muttered, scrolling. A second article popped up. "Evidence of mismanagement emerges board members. Question Hale's leadership." Evelyn covered her mouth. "Oh, God." But Harper wasn't finished. "Sweetheart, it gets so much worse for him." The next notification revealed a leaked internal memo showing Brandon had hidden substantial debt from his investors, an offense that could trigger legal consequences. Evelyn felt a wave of disbelief wash through her. She had known Brandon was struggling, but not like this. Not to the point where his entire empire could collapse with one push. Across the city, Brandon stormed into Hale Dynamics' boardroom, throwing a stack of newspapers onto the table. "Who leaked this?" he shouted. No one answered. His CFO looked pale. "Brandon, the auditors showed up this morning. They said they were sent by the new controlling entity." Brandon's jaw clenched. There is no new controlling entity. Brandon, the CFO whispered, someone owns your company. At that exact moment, Vanessa burst into the room, waving her phone hysterically. My father saw the headline, she shrieked. He wants a meeting, now. He said, you misrepresented your financial stability. Brandon snapped, I didn't misrepresent anything. But he stopped, because deep down, he knew he had. Meanwhile, Evelyn stood by Harper's apartment window, heart heavy with disbelief. She didn't celebrate, didn't smirk, didn't feel joy in watching Brandon's unraveling. She only felt a quiet, aching sadness for the life she once believed in. Then Harper placed a gentle hand on her back. Ev, this isn't random. Someone is protecting you. Evelyn turned toward her. Who? Harper hesitated, her voice soft but certain. Someone who has more power than Brandon ever imagined. He's Maber. Across the city, Samuel Carter folded the morning newspaper and whispered. He's only just beginning to feel the consequences. The morning after the takeover headline broke, Manhattan's power brokers were already whispering the same question over espresso shots and conference tables. Who had the strength and the motive to silently buy Hale Dynamics overnight? By noon, speculation turned into wildfire. At 12:43 p.m., a second wave of leaks hit the financial press. Not about Brandon this time, but about the buyer. Evelyn Carter sat across from Harper at a small midtown cafe when Harper's phone buzzed relentlessly. Her eyes widened as she stared at the screen. Oh my God. Evelyn swallowed. What now? Harper turned the phone toward her. A new headline burned across the Financial Times app. Anonymous buyer linked to Carter Holdings, one of Wall Street's most feared silent funds. Evelyn blinked. Carter Holdings? That can't be right. My father. Harper grabbed her hands. Evelyn, Carter Holdings belongs to your family. This isn't a coincidence. Evelyn's breath caught. She had always known her father was wealthy, but not this. Not a shadow empire powerful enough to topple a company in one night. Across town, in the Hale Dynamics boardroom, chaos erupted. Vanessa slammed the article onto the table. Carter Holdings? Are you kidding me? Your wife's family owns Carter Holdings? End quote. Brandon felt the blood drain from his face. No, that's impossible. Evelyn isn't. She's not. She never said. The CFO coughed quietly. It appears she didn't need to say anything. Then came the death blow. A second alert pinged on every phone in the room. Sources confirm. Carter Holdings' acquisition was purposeful, a targeted move, following CEO's public misconduct. Vanessa's jaw dropped. This is retaliation. Brandon's voice cracked. By who? Evelyn? She couldn't. But slowly, painfully, he began piecing it together. Evelyn's father at the gala. His emotionless stare. His phone in hand. The silence. It hadn't been disapproval. It had been the beginning. Brandon staggered back, gripping the table. Oh God, I picked the wrong woman to betray. Meanwhile, Evelyn stood on a windy Manhattan sidewalk, staring at the headline, her heart pounding with disbelief and something she hadn't felt in days. Strength. For the first time, she understood. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He had waited, watched, and then, without raising his voice, he erased the man who dared humiliate her. Harper squeezed Evelyn's hand. Ev, your father didn't just defend you, he declared war. And somewhere inside Carter Holdings headquarters, Samuel Carter signed another document, the one that officially stripped Brandon Hale of every voting right he'd ever had. The world now knew who held the power. And the storm had only begun. Brandon Hale had faced investors, boards, competitors, and scandals before, but nothing compared to the dread flooding his chest as he stood inside the marble lobby of Carter Holdings' Park Avenue tower. He'd been summoned, though no one said by whom. The email had contained only 3 words. Be here. Noon. Vanessa refused to come with him. She was too busy trying to salvage her family's reputation. So Brandon rode the elevator alone, watching his distorted reflection tremble in the chrome walls. The doors opened to silence. A single assistant motioned him forward without a word. At the end of a long hallway, a glass door slid open. Samuel Carter sat behind an obsidian desk, Manhattan's skyline glowing behind him. He didn't rise. He didn't extend his hand. He didn't blink. Brandon swallowed hard. Mr. Carter, thank you for meeting me. I think there's been a misunderstanding. If you can't and the Wazer. Samuel studied him, not like a man observes another man, but like a lion examines a wounded animal. A misunderstanding, Samuel repeated softly. By all means, explain. Brandon forced a smile. My company is going through a temporary shift. Rumors, exaggerated filings, someone is manipulating things from the outside. Samuel's gaze did not move. Indeed, Brandon continued, desperation leaking through his tone. I respect your daughter, sir. I care for her deeply. I never meant for the gala to seem... Samuel raised a hand. Brandon fell silent instantly. Samuel spoke slowly. Precisely. Evelyn is my only child. She is loyal, kind, too forgiving. Traits men like you confuse with weakness. Brandon felt sweat bead at his hairline. Samuel slid a document across the desk. These, he said, are the finalized acquisition papers for Hale Dynamics. As of 7 a.m., the company belongs entirely to Carter Holdings. Brandon's breath hitched. You can't do that. I already have, Samuel replied. Brandon's voice cracked. Why? To punish me? Evelyn wouldn't want this? Samuel finally stood, towering without raising his voice. You publicly humiliated my daughter. You treated her as disposable. You forgot she carries my name, my blood. My silence at the gala was not acceptance. He leaned forward. It was calculation. Brandon staggered back, shaking. Please, Samuel, there must be something. No, Samuel said. You made your choices. And now you will live with them. Security appeared at the doorway, waiting for the signal. Samuel gave a single nod. Brandon was escorted out, powerless, voiceless, stripped of the empire he once believed made him untouchable. In the elevator, sinking floor by floor, Brandon realized something chilling. He hadn't just betrayed the wrong woman, he had challenged the wrong family. The days following the takeover moved like a quiet storm, destructive beneath the surface, yet strangely peaceful for Evelyn Carter. For the first time in years, she woke without the weight of Brandon's expectations pressing on her chest. There was still pain, but it no longer crushed her. It sharpened her. Harper insisted she take time for herself, but Evelyn needed something different: clarity. On Friday morning, she walked into a boutique in Tribeca, one she'd passed 100 times but never dared enter. The place wasn't loud or flashy. It was the kind of boutique where women with direction shopped, where women who knew their worth didn't ask for permission. The stylist approached gently. What are you looking for? Evelyn inhaled slowly. A beginning. Dover seat. 2 hours later, she stepped out wearing a tailored ivory blazer, straight-leg trousers, and a soft silk blouse that caught the morning light. Her hair, once kept simple to please Brandon's preferences, now framed her face in soft waves. She looked older, not in age but in certainty, a woman who had walked through fire and found herself on the other side. Harper whistled when she saw her. Ev, you look like you just fired a board of directors. Evelyn smiled softly. I guess I kind of did. End quote. End quote. That evening, they attended the Whitmore Foundation charity event, the same level of prestige as the gala where everything had fallen apart. But tonight, the air felt different. Evelyn wasn't hiding in the crowd. She walked in through the main entrance, shoulders back, chin lifted, the city lights reflecting in her eyes like quiet armor. Whispers followed her. Is that Evelyn Carter? She looks incredible. I heard her father took over Hale Dynamics. No wonder Brandon's panicking. To date us. Evelyn didn't flinch. She let the whispers swirl and pass through them like smoke. At the bar, a familiar voice spoke behind her. You look extraordinary. Evelyn turned to find Liam Archer, the discreet, soft-spoken CEO of Archer Capital, a man she had met briefly months ago during one of Brandon's corporate dinners. Back then, he'd been polite, reserved. Tonight, his gaze held something warmer. You deserved better than what happened, Liam said. Everyone saw that. You know, they're Telfer. Evelyn didn't reply immediately. Instead, she studied him. His sincerity felt unsettling, not because it frightened her, but because she wasn't used to kindness without motive. Thank you, she said softly. I'm learning to move forward. Liam nodded. If you ever need support, professional or otherwise, you have it. It wasn't flirtation. It was respect. And as the orchestra began playing, Evelyn realized she wasn't returning to her old life. She was stepping into a new one, and this time, on her own terms. 2 days after the charity event, Evelyn Carter found herself standing inside the lobby of Hale Dynamics, the company she once tiptoed around, always careful not to disrupt Brandon's fragile ego. Today, she walked through the revolving glass doors with a steadiness that made employees pause mid-step. She wasn't here as someone's wife. She wasn't here seeking closure. She was here as the new owner. Harper walked beside her, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "Ready?" she murmured. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I think I finally am." The elevator opened onto the executive floor, where half a dozen board members were waiting anxiously. They straightened the moment they saw her. A few even looked relieved, as if stability had just stepped off the elevator. "Miss Carter," the chairman said, offering his hand, "we've been expecting you." The title landed strangely in her ears. She'd been Mrs. Hale for so long that reclaiming her own name felt like slipping into a forgotten version of herself, one she realized she missed. They brought her into the boardroom, a sweeping glass-walled space overlooking Manhattan. It used to intimidate her. Now it felt manageable. Her father wasn't present. Samuel believed in giving power, not overshadowing it. A stack of documents lay neatly arranged at the head of the table. "First order of business," the chairman said, "is to formally appoint you as acting CEO. Carter Holdings holds controlling interest, but Mr. Carter made it clear the operational direction should come from you." Evelyn blinked. "Me? But I'm not." Harper nudged her gently. "You're exactly who this company needs, and you know it." Evelyn drew a steady breath and took the seat. Her seat. The meeting began. Financial projections, restructuring plans, department evaluations. Evelyn listened carefully, asked sharp questions, and surprised even herself with how confidently she analyzed the problems Brandon had ignored for years. By the end of the hour, the board exchanged glances, impressed, reassured, aligned. "Miss Carter," the chairman said, "the company is yours to rebuild." Employees outside the room stole glances through the glass. Whispers began spreading through the office. "That's his wife?" "No. That's the new owner. She's nothing like Brandon. Why look Staver? She actually looks like she knows what she's doing." Evelyn stood, smoothing her blazer, feeling the full weight and empowerment of the moment. Before leaving, she walked into Brandon's former office. The space still smelled of his cologne, of power misused and trust betrayed. She opened the window blinds, letting sunlight flood in. "This place deserves better," she whispered. And for the first time, she believed she was capable of giving it exactly that. What she didn't know was that Brandon, watching from across the street in a parked car, saw her silhouette through the glass, and realized he had lost far more than a company. Brandon Hale had always believed he was untouchable. That confidence, the sharp, polished, blinding confidence, had carried him through most of his adult life without consequence. But confidence turns to desperation quickly when the walls begin to close in. And now, they were closing in fast. 3 days after discovering he'd lost Hale Dynamics, Brandon sat in his cramped temporary office, a far cry from the glass-walled empire he once ruled, rummaging through paperwork like a drowning man searching for air. He hadn't slept. He hadn't shaved. The world he built was cracking beneath him, and every attempt to stop the collapse only revealed more rot he had tried to hide. Then came the knock. His former CFO, Michael Porter, stepped in slowly, holding a file with both hands. "Brandon, we need to talk." Brandon rubbed his temples. "If this is about the takeover." "It's not." Michael closed the door. "It's about the audit." Brandon froze. Michael placed the file on the desk. "The auditors found financial discrepancies, real ones, not rumors, not exaggerations." Brandon's voice dropped. "What discrepancies?" "Documents you signed," Michael said quietly. "Transfers you authorized. Misappropriation of funds." Brandon felt the room tilt. No, this is a setup. Someone forged my signature." Michael shook his head. "They matched your handwriting. Your digital key." "Brandon? This came from you." Panic crawled up Brandon's spine. "If this gets out, it already has." Michael turned his laptop around. An article flashed across the screen. Federal regulators begin investigating former Hale Dynamics CEO for financial misconduct. Brandon's world went silent. His breath caught. His fingers trembled. They're investigating me?" Michael exhaled. "Brandon, you lied on filings. You hid losses. You moved funds to cover your own expenses. They have enough to charge you." Brandon staggered to his feet. "Vanessa, she'll help me, she..." Michael's expression darkened. Vanessa Boyd issued a public statement this morning. She denied any personal or professional involvement. She said her family was misled by you. Brandon felt something break inside him. Vanessa had abandoned him. The Boyds had cut him off. His board had replaced him. His company was gone. His reputation was ashes. And worst of all, he had done it to himself. Meanwhile, across the city, Evelyn sat in her new office reviewing the latest restructuring report. She hadn't asked for Brandon's downfall. She hadn't engineered it. But she also didn't flinch from the truth. Actions have consequences. Cruelty has a price. And betrayal carries a debt that always comes due. As the sun set over Manhattan, Brandon received the final blow. A notification from the Securities and Exchange Commission requesting his immediate appearance for questioning. He dropped the phone. His knees buckled. Everything he feared, everything he tried to outrun, was here. And for the first time, Brandon Hale understood what it meant to lose everything. The storm had finally quieted, with Brandon facing legal action and Hale dynamics stabilizing under new leadership. The noise around Evelyn began to fade. Headlines shifted, whispers softened, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something she almost didn't recognize. Breathing room. One crisp autumn morning, Evelyn left her office early and walked through Central Park. The air smelled like pine and cool wind, the kind that carries both endings and beginnings. She stopped near a bench overlooking the lake, watching sunlight ripple across the water. Her entire adult life had been spent holding on to something, someone out of fear of being left behind. But here, in the gentle quiet, she realized she wasn't being left behind. She was moving forward. Harper sat beside her a few minutes later, holding 2 hot chocolates. "You look calmer," Harper observed. "I feel lighter," Evelyn admitted, "like the world isn't suffocating me anymore." "Understand. That's because you finally stopped carrying someone else's weight." Evelyn smiled. "Maybe." They sat in silence until Harper nudged her elbow. "So, have you decided about Liam?" Evelyn's cheeks warmed. "Harper, nothing is happening with Liam." "Not yet," Harper teased. "But he likes you, and he shows it in that quiet, respectful, non-Brandon way. It's refreshing." "Everyone." Evelyn thought back to the charity event, the gentle sincerity in Liam Archer's voice, the way he offered support without expecting anything in return. It scared her, not because it felt wrong, but because it felt safe. "I'm not sure I'm ready," Evelyn whispered. "You don't have to be," Harper said softly. "You just have to let yourself heal." Later that day, Liam appeared at Hale Dynamics for a scheduled meeting. He paused when he saw Evelyn in the hallway, her posture calm, her eyes steady. "You look well," Liam said. "I'm trying," she replied. He hesitated before adding, "If you ever want to talk about anything not business, I'm here." Evelyn's heart fluttered gently, not with fear this time, but possibility. "Thank you," she said, and she meant it. When he walked away, she realized something important. For the first time, a future without Brandon didn't feel like a void. It felt like space wide, open, waiting. That evening, she returned home to a quiet penthouse, the one legally hers now, and placed a rosemary plant on the windowsill, a small symbol, something new growing where something painful had ended. And as she looked out over the Manhattan skyline, Evelyn felt a truth settle into her bones. She had lost a husband, but she had found herself. And that was a trade she would never regret. Winter settled over Manhattan with a quiet kind of brilliance, the kind that turns every city light into a promise. Evelyn Carter stepped out of the courthouse, the final divorce decree in her hand. No drama, no shouting, no last-minute pleas, just closure. Brandon Hale never showed up. His lawyers stood in for him, their faces stiff and drained. With federal charges pending, his world had shrunk to courtrooms and interrogations. His name, once tied to ambition and innovation, now inspired pity. It was the kind of fall no one celebrated publicly, but everyone agreed it was earned. Harper wrapped an arm around Evelyn. "It's done. Completely done." Evelyn nodded. She felt no triumph, no vengeance, only peace. A quiet, warm peace she'd never known before. Across the street, Samuel Carter leaned against his car, watching her with a proud, restrained smile. He wasn't a man of hugs, but today he opened his arms, and Evelyn walked straight into them. "You didn't have to do everything you did," she whispered. "I didn't," Samuel agreed, "but I wanted you to understand something. He pulled back, his voice gentle but firm. No one gets to decide your worth. Not a husband, not a past, not even me. Tears pricked her eyes. For the first time since childhood, she felt the fullness of her father's love, not hidden, not cold, but steady and real. That evening, she returned to the penthouse, the one that finally felt like hers, and found a note at the door, a simple envelope. Inside was a card, handwritten, "Dinner tonight? Rooftop at the Archer. No expectations, just company. Liam." Evelyn's heart fluttered not from fear, but from something gentle and hopeful. She considered saying no. She considered waiting another month, maybe another year, but healing doesn't always come from time. Sometimes it comes from choosing what feels right in a quiet moment. So she went. The rooftop glowed beneath soft lights strung across steel beams, overlooking a skyline painted in gold. Liam stood when he saw her, his expression warm and unhurried. "You came," he said softly. "I wanted to," she replied. They talked for hours, not about Brandon, not about scandals, but about dreams, values, the kind of lives they hoped to build. Evelyn laughed a real laugh, light and unbroken. Liam's eyes softened every time he heard it. When he walked her home, he didn't reach for her hand. He didn't rush. At her door, he simply said, "I hope I'll see you again." Evelyn smiled. "You will." And as she stepped inside, she felt it completely. She had survived the fire. She had been rebuilt. She was loved not for what she endured, but for who she truly was. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn Carter's story ended exactly the way she deserved. Whole, respected, and free. All right, my wonderful friends. So here we are. They're with me right now. It means something in Evelyn's journey touched your heart in a way that isn't easy to put into words. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it revealed a truth you've been trying to ignore. Or maybe it simply whispered, "You deserve better." Life has a way of breaking us open so we can finally see who we are. Like the Stoics said, the obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When we choose dignity over chaos, self-respect over desperation, and healing over revenge, we change the color of our lives. And just like Evelyn, we learn that losing what harms us is not a loss at all, it's a release. Your worth isn't defined by who leaves, but by who you become afterward. If this story moved you, even a little, I'd love for you to do these stories together. Stories that remind us we're stronger, wiser, and more deserving than we often allow ourselves to believe. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. And remember, you are not broken, you are becoming.